All right, so the headline for this is that Blackberry is fantastic. This is a Tuesday episode, which we don't do unless something surprises us.
Yeah,
basically.
we don't do unless we do.
Fridays, we do our regular episodes. Tuesday, if something jumps out at us, we can cover it quickly.
Yeah.
So Blackberry surprised us. It's fantastic. I thought every minute, every scene of this movie was tense, interesting, electric, and I want to totally recommend it. I think you feel the same way, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, we saw a trailer. We were like, okay, that looks kind of fun. And again, this is a movie that if we didn't have the Alamo season pass, we probably wouldn't have bothered to see in theaters. But I'm, again, so glad that we did. It was a great drama. As we walked out, you said it was like Social Network plus, what was the other one?
Oh, we're getting to that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I've got a whole little theory.
Okay, great. Well, anyway, it was a lot of fun. And like, normally, kind of like Air, I don't care about the story of the corporation, but it wasn't about that. It was a human story, and it was great.
I'm glad you mentioned Air because Blackberry serves a similar market, the adult drama market, where the story is about boardrooms and characters and a really tight script. It's darker and maybe more cynical. I mean, it doesn't have a happy ending like Air does. Air is sort of unique in that retrospect. But
right.
Yeah, this one's great. But I think the theory that I have about Blackberry, which is maybe more interesting for the purpose of this episode, is that the movie has a sense of lineage and evolution. So this is my theory. This movie that came out in 2023 felt like almost a throwback to me.
Yeah.
And I spent some time investigating that, and I've assembled this manic little theory, and I think you'll like it.
Okay, I'm ready.
Blackberry belongs to my favorite, most delightful subgenre of films, the 2010 style Runaway Train Capitalism biopic.
Okay.
The rules of this subgenre is that the story has to be based on a real story, based on real events.
Yes.
The main arc and theme is temptation and sort of the cannibalizing self-interest, and it has to end as a cautionary tale. Preferably with like title cards at the end where you get some grim updates about the downfall, the aftermath, and the fates of the major players.
Yes.
Yes, these are all Fausta stories, but that's a different conversation.
Gosh, okay.
So this is sort of the lineage that I'm talking about. It begins in 2010 with Social Network.
Man, The Social Network is such a good movie.
It's the best, and I think that's why it sort of crystallized this subgenre.
Yeah.
So you've got the endless predatory monetization of community and communication that creates this social media hellscape.
Yes.
2011, you have Margin Call, which takes place on the night before the 2008 stock market crash in real time. So you get to see them see the crash is coming, and then you see all the cockroaches scatter for are they going to save themselves at the cost of ruining every other firm and the whole economy.
How have I never heard of this movie?
I watched it when you were out of town. It's fantastic. I'll watch it again.
We got to watch that, yeah.
And then in 2013, you have The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Which has this long arc of history through penny stocks, Wall Street, and then this whole con artist firm that ultimately crashes and implodes. 2015, you have The Big Short, which is the mortgage market relative to stocks and investment market.
And the 2008 financial crash.
Exactly. That's sort of, they all have this kabloom at the end.
Yeah.
Also
Big Short's also really good.
So good.
Yeah.
In 2015, you also have Steve Jobs. So this is anchored around 3 big product launches for Apple. But the kind of creeping theme through the movie is this leeching humanity, where it shreds all of these characters' sense of family and camaraderie and health.
And go ahead, sorry.
While Apple devours the economy.
Yes. Let me clarify. That's the Michael Fassbender one, not the Ashton Kutcher one.
When in doubt, I'm talking about the Sorkin version.
I just want people to know, because there was at the same time, there was also just Jobs that came out with Ashton Kutcher, and that's not what that is.
2018, you have Vice, which might be my favorite here.
Man, also same director, Adam McKay for Big Short. And
you've got Sorkin on here twice. There's a theme
here.
But Vice is Iraq war profiteering, the profit motive, and the development of the modern military-industrial complex.
Centering around Dick Cheney.
Yes, and I think the finale to this decade of this subgenre is 2019's Dark Waters.
Oh,
which
yeah,
you've got one noble environmental lawyer versus DuPont, this massive conglomerate corporation. You've got the Teflon poisoning, finding out that these chemicals are in everyday household items and how sick people are getting.
Yeah.
And then the creeping trend in that movie is the dirty money behind the lack of regulation on these dangerous chemicals.
And that's Mark Ruffalo, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That one
We'll talk about the Mark Ruffalo investigative journalism subgenre another day. but that's another one of my favorites.
The people have to know.
But Dark Waters is maybe the most brutal and
Yeah.
grim, so I think it's a nice way to end that decade.
Yeah.
So Blackberry is of that ilk. I think it
Uh-huh.
adds to that lineage. And then the next question was, so what does 2023's Blackberry add to the mix? What does it add to this legacy? And you can jump in at any time, but I have a couple bullet points here.
Great. Okay.
So the first one, I think, is the ruthless dog-eat-dog steamrolling of technological innovation in North America, basically.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Where the idea is that when an industry disruptor pops up, when your possible successor arrives, you can't coexist with them. They will destroy you. It's the Netflix blockbuster thing. And this movie, you follow that in real time with the characters, instead of in something like Dark Waters, where you're sort of following the crisis after the fact
Yes.
and piecing together those things. It has
Yes.
that Wolf of Wall Street idea of being in the middle of it.
Uh-huh.
And seeing that corruption in real time, which
Yeah.
I think makes it a more harrowing and effective
Yeah.
journey.
And Social Network does that too. It's you
Yes,
follow it
yes.
as it happens. Yeah.
And like Social Network, you're following the tech world, but there's a new twist here because you're in the smartphone market as it is sort of born.
Yeah.
And you see this push, this really ravenous push to monetize everything and everyone. There's this fascination in the movie, in the characters' voices, about the idea of minutes.
Yeah.
And how you can monetize, buy up and sell the minutes of people's lives, not
Right.
just of their phone plan. It becomes
Right.
this larger idea.
Of course. Yeah.
And all of the scenes with the phone carriers, the phone companies, I think are especially sleazy and telling in that respect. And I don't know if a lot of the other movies on the list you get those kind of A to B to C business dealings where you follow each step of the deal.
Yeah. Not so much.
Because
Yeah.
you see the kind of grossness and corruption all the way down. The other thing is success and temptation as self-interest. As you see the beginning of, I have an idea, this will be my fortune. This will make
Yeah.
my fortune and be my $1 million and be the
Yeah.
American dream.
Right.
And you see that go off the rails.
Yeah.
Where it divides and breaks up friendships.
Yeah.
And then maybe this is the innovation, because you've got that Social Network character of Eduardo, the Andrew Garfield character,
Yes,
who's the good, noble-hearted friend who gets totally screwed over as the story goes. You have a version of that here with Doug. But then you have this riff, and I think this is an addition to this canon. Jim.
Yeah.
Jim is the business guy who becomes the co-CEO and eventually launches the company into the business heights that it would achieve.
He takes the great idea and markets it in the right way.
Right. And instead of, this subgenre is not unfamiliar with this type of character, but Jim's ambitions go way higher than
yeah.
anyone else here, where he,
Yes.
I guess slight spoiler, but he starts to try to buy up parts of the NHL.
Yeah.
Like eventually maybe the entire league.
Yeah, like
he wants to buy up.
He's capitalizing on his own success to try and like rise above and go beyond Blackberry.
And
yeah.
he goes from being almost the lead in the beginning of the movie, and
Yeah,
he's
he is.
just magnetic as a
Yeah.
performance.
Oh, he's so good.
Incredible. He goes from being almost the lead of the movie to sort of fading off into the background as he looks for these greener pastures elsewhere.
Yeah, and as he sort of unravels.
Yes, it serves, and it's beautifully constructed because it serves the narrative as other characters are developing and taking up more screen time, more of your kind of more of the brainwave of the narrative.
Yeah.
But it's also that the character has this wandering eye, so
Yeah.
he's less interested in being the main character of the story. And by the end, most of his scenes are these like quick cuts of him taking calls on a private jet, and this endless ambition that you see as the character spirals almost out of the narrative, you see that also spiral into stock fraud. And this is where you see the crimes, because
Yes.
the crimes that you see in a movie like Dark Waters, it's all cover-up
Yeah.
of just total greed and hiding shit.
It's pure evil.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The crimes you see in Vice are flagrant.
Oh my gosh.
You
yeah.
see things like the Patriot Act, right? Where it's under this guise of protecting America. And you hit that from a different angle. The crimes of The Big Short are just fooling people
Oh yeah.
and lying and not caring when the bubble's going to burst.
Right.
The crimes of Wolf of Wall Street are maybe the closest here because they're the most overt and
Yeah.
indulgent. There's that like delicious evil
Yeah.
to Wolf of Wall Street, which is why it's so
Yes.
seductive.
And it's like purely financially driven.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, they all are in these movies, but it's so like black and white about money.
And Blackberry splits the difference between those two styles in a really interesting way because you see that indulgence, where Jim knows what he's doing is illegal.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also kind of just like this white collar, sign the paperwork differently and backdate something.
Yes.
So it's not, it's this sleight of hand where he's doing something. I mean, he's not snorting cocaine off of Margot Robbie. It's a different,
it's a different kind of crime.
It's this like laundered version of that with that same glint in his eye that DiCaprio has in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
I love bringing that energy into this business setting instead of having to go off on the yacht like you do in Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
It's a really interesting kind of shift in setting here.
Well, yeah, I think another like innovation of this movie kind of tying into that is the types of characters we're following. Because in something like Dark Waters, you're following a hero, Mark Ruffalo, who is trying to uncover, it's just Mark Ruffalo in all these, it's that same type of person, trying to uncover the evils of others, right? Or you're in Social Network or Vice, where you're following an evil person doing bad things. And it's a human story. You sympathize with them in a way. You understand them as a person, but it's clear that like they are doing a bad thing. In Blackberry, it's much more complex than that, because at the very beginning, you sympathize with all three main characters. You sympathize with Jim because he's like not doing well at his job. You can see he has ambition. He wants to be successful. And as like abrasive and harsh as he is, you care about him and you root for him. And Mike and Doug are like true like humans, like these engineers who care very deeply about making something really good and doing a really good job and innovating. Like you care deeply about what they are doing and about their success.
They want it to be perfect.
And so it's like these three very different people, but who are like trying to do a good thing in their own way. And you see them all sort of unravel in their own way. So rather than like a good guy, you know, saving us from the bad people, or a bad person starting out bad and getting worse, it's like these good people that you care about that kind of unravel. Like Mike and Doug are not trying to, I mean, they're trying to make money, but everybody who has a job is trying to make money. Like, if you disagree with that, you're stupid and don't know how the world works. Like, you can enjoy your job and care about it, but you wouldn't do it if you weren't paid for it. Like, let's be honest, right? So, like, they're just trying to, like, make a good thing and do a good job. And, like, especially Mike, like, sorry, I'm still sick.
That's all right.
Mike's big thing is he wants to, like, he cares deeply about American engineers who care enough to not have the buzzing in the background, who care enough to make a really good thing that works as it's supposed to, not just about like output for cheap labor. Like he cares deeply about quality engineering. And Doug, his partner, business partner, cares really deeply about
Mike.
about Mike and about the people that they work with and about like maintaining a good like morale among their staff and like everybody having a good time and making their really difficult jobs worth it. Like he cares a lot about that. And he is also very smart and really understands the engineering aspect of everything and also wants to make a good thing. So these like two characters are like our heroes here. Right. And Jim is a bit more complex, but again, you care about his success and you can see him like recognizing the potential in Mike and Doug and wanting to help them. Not in a very kind way, but he wants to help. And then it just all unravels. Yes. Like you see Mike become this greed-driven like villain, like still like surrounding his like or I guess motivated by his desire to make a good thing, but you see him eventually like at the beginning of the movie there's a line where Jim says perfect is the enemy of good, and Mike says good enough is the enemy of humanity. And then towards the end of the movie when they're trying to like launch this trackpad phone, the Blackberry Storm, you see so many people saying it's good enough, which is so antithetical to what Mike is trying to do. And like that's where he ultimately fails, is by like outsourcing to China and like having the Blackberry Storm be completely defective and like the company just collapsing.
You break the principal players into these archetypes that ultimately destroy a business, where you have the ideas, the humanity, and the business perspective in these three principal characters, and you see how it becomes unsustainable, the attempt to balance those. And by having Mike have this sort of indie heart perfectionism
Yeah.
underlying the reason he started the company. As that fades away, you use a character stage for this other thing we haven't really seen talked about in this subgenre, the overseas manufacturing assembly line versus that handmade passion project perfectionism that they have at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And you're staging this in such, I mean, it's a boring subject if you look at it dry on paper.
Very boring.
But when you root it in character,
in humanity.
Yes, you see humans wrestling with profit motive. You see this temptation to cut corners, to sacrifice principles for profit margin. You see the decisions, the inflection points that hollowed out North American manufacturing. And I think maybe to open it up for the last few minutes of this, I had just a couple quick hits about what I loved in this movie and why it worked so well. So jump in at any time.
Okay.
But the frantic directing style, these firecracker characters, the punchy, sharp dialogue, the layered, realistic arguments that they have, the relentless pacing, the poignant silences that balance that out, the natural pop culture references that really establish a sense of time and setting.
Yes,
And maybe last but not least, the dramatic seesaw that makes movies magical, where you have the soaring highs and the crushing lows. Watching this for 2 hours, it felt like almost a speed run of Mad Men or Billions or Succession. Which is sort of the other thing that's happened in that 2010s decade.
Yes.
Is these long form fictional navigations of these ideas where you get dozens of hours with these characters, where you can chart that arc and decline.
And those aren't based on true stories necessarily, but they're based in our own world and similar to true events.
Exactly. And here, I mean, even in the supporting roles that you get in this movie, like Doug, who you mentioned, who is sort of a riff on that Social Network, Eduardo, tragic figure, the loyal one with the good heart who cares about the humanity, who cannot exist when you get to that higher atmosphere of business success.
Right. It won't work,
He's so memorable and human. He's so heartfelt without being saccharine or ironic or anything else that would cheapen the earnestness of his voice.
And he's got his own flaws. Like, he's very abrasive, and he is overbearing and kind of talks over Mike. And like, he has his own flaws. And sometimes his investment in movie night is maybe, you know, misplaced or maybe too intense at some point. So, you know, he's not a perfect like hero.
But maybe that's what makes him genuine and earnest, is that messy humanity, where you see the things he's striving for, but he's not succeeding.
Right.
He can't perfectly articulate or manage what's going through his head. The meteoric things happening in his life. He feels like almost the perfect embodiment, even more than Mike, of the film's approach and temperament to this subject matter, which makes it even more fitting that he co-wrote the movie.
Doug did?
Yes.
I didn't know
and
that.
directed it.
Oh my God, wait, that was Doug? Whoa.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I probably should have
I know, that really
connected those dots.
I was looking up all the details about the movie, and that just brought it home for me.
Wow.
That's Matt Johnson.
Really interesting.
Incredible.
Oh, so his name isn't actually Doug? That's funny.
No, the actor.
Oh,
The actor's name is Matt
stupid.
Johnson.
I thought you meant the human Doug.
No.
You worded that very
I don't
weirdly.
think I did. I don't think I did.
think the listeners
The
would
guy
disagree.
who played Doug.
If you thought Cam meant that actually Doug directed it, send us an email.
No.
It's secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com.
No, I think he has too much money to do that.
Okay, well that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. The human element of this, I think, is what really carries this story and what makes it, I mean, not unique, because all these other movies that you listed have that human element, but the way they went about it, I think, was really interesting. Another interesting like mirroring that I noticed while watching it and like helping to understand the unraveling of these characters. Early on in the film, when Jim, I guess slight spoiler, again, these are true events, so it's like, what am I spoiling?
No one has a Blackberry anymore. You know what happens.
Yeah, but Jim is fired from his corporate job that he has at the start of the movie. And when Mike asks why he was fired, Jim says, because they're stupid. Which is funny and like a totally like relatable thing.
Sure. But
then near the end of the movie, when Mike is really unraveling and he's responding to the 2007 iPhone launch, that which is very funny, like to tie it to the Steve Jobs movie, because we actually see that press conference where he announces the iPhone. He hates the idea of the iPhone. He thinks it's totally stupid. He's like,
Yeah.
why would they ever do this? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Like, there's no keyboard. Like, that's so dumb. And because we're in 2023, we know that the iPhone is like the most successful product of all time.
Right.
And we're like, that's not stupid at all, Mike. You're the dumb one.
Mm-hmm. And
like, it's that selfishness and that hubris that like assuming everyone else around you is dumb and you're right. And so that makes you sort of reflect on Jim saying that, oh, I was fired because everybody is dumb. And so you kind of second guess it. You're like, well, maybe he was fired for a good reason, because he's this like abrasive, overambitious, like self-interested person.
The ideas, the humanity, and the business side, the three kind of pillars of this movie, the fact that they cannot exist together at a high level, but also that any one of them in charge will also tear the whole thing down.
Yes, it wouldn't work with any of them in charge, yeah.
It makes it, that's why I called this subgenre the Runaway Train Capitalism Biopic, because there isn't, you can't say if this person made a different decision at this one moment, everything would have been fine.
Right, yeah.
It's too messy.
Yeah, it's not, well, if they kept moving, it would have been fine.
There's too much inertia by the end. And I was blown away by how quick this movie felt.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah, because it's not like, oh, well, if they hadn't outsourced to China, it would have been fine. It's the second the iPhone was launched, they were done.
Yeah.
Like that was the losing game. But even beyond that, the company was already not being run well. There was a like complexity about who's in charge. It was Jim bringing in all these other guys. It was Jim like hiring these people in this illegal, stock thing. I don't understand way. Like it was all of these things that were already making it not go well. And then the iPhone just ruins it all. So like that's the straw.
And you kind of want to watch the House of Cards fall down.
Yeah.
You want to see the Jenga tower just collapse.
You do.
And you get to see that here. So,
but I'm very pleased to know that Doug just sold his stocks and now he's super rich and is just vibing. So good for him.
Personally, I'm very glad the 2010s are not over, because I loved a lot of the movies in that decade. Yeah. And this sits alongside any of the ones in that genre.
It was also interesting to watch as like being the age that we are.
Yeah.
Neither of us had Blackberries because we were a little too young when the Blackberry came out.
Right.
Like I didn't have an email address in 2003 because I was in, fourth grade.
You had T9 word.
I didn't have a phone in 2003.
Yeah.
Man, I miss T9 texting. That was a wild time in our lives. I was so good at it. I was a pro. I could never do it now. But
no.
Anyway, so yeah, it was really interesting to watch. Man, it was a really good movie. I recommend you go see it in your local theater because it's a lot of fun.
And down in the comments or at our email or wherever you want, let us know if you think there are any movies that we missed in this subgenre.
In this subgenre.
Where it has to be based on a real story and it's about usually a company or a person or a business thing just getting gigantic and then imploding.
I do know that Tetris came out recently, and we kind of missed it in theaters, and it's got an interesting like tie to some like the Soviet Union. Like I don't even know what's going on over there. We just missed it in theaters, so we'll see it when it streams.
We'll try to track that one down.
So we got Tetris, but other than that, tell us what else that we've missed. So
cool. All right, we'll be back here on Friday with a brand new episode. Get bonus episodes on Substack and all of our other links for social media and all the other stuff down there in the bio.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. See you soon. Bye.